told me something the other day that makes me appreciate more what you've done over the years, because you really started at nothing, at the base, at the zero, like outside of civilization almost.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's interesting because, this is something I had sort of put behind me in a way. I did have a lot of a very different childhood, and I left my parents. I was 16, and then I started my first business, or I started sort of in the business of sales and marketing at the age of 18. And in those 2 years, I traveled a bit, and then I continued doing that, and it's been a very long progress or process, if you will. I transformed a lot over the years. But yeah, when we say start from zero, it was below zero, on a lot of very simple things. I grew up with no electricity, no running water. So it was just sort of this completely different childhood. We were on a 100-acre property located roughly about 30 minutes from a very small town called Fort Coulonge. That's about a 2-hour drive.
Fort Coulonge.
Fort Coulonge, Quebec.
He always told me, I was asking him where he was from, and he was always saying, it's just past Fort Coulonge.
Just 2 hours.
Just past Fort Coulonge. But I had no idea that past Fort Coulonge had nothing up to until the North Pole.
Yeah, so essentially Fort Coulonge is located, so it's sort of like, you've got sort of, it goes like down the Ottawa River, or the Fleuve Saint-Laurent.
Yeah.
That meets the Ottawa River, and sort of the population in Quebec and Ontario are located like Quebec City on the river, and then you go down a little bit towards the west, and you got Montreal. Then you go a little bit more west, and you have Ottawa, and then you go south towards Toronto. Toronto's a lot more south than it is. So, but if you continue going a little bit,
nothing.
Yeah. So if you follow the Ottawa River, it's a little bit sort of like northwest of Ottawa, and then that's sort of the edge of Quebec, essentially, right?
Edge of Quebec and edge of Ontario.
Exactly, or of the population of Quebec. I was looking at a map of where I was from, and essentially, you have sort of like all of it's colored in two colors, and you have the green areas which are protected lands, and then you have like all of the red areas that are sort of like the population or inhabited land, and then you have this little tail end, like a little peak, at the end here, and at the very tip of that's where we were. So you walked out of the property, you were on Crown land, and you basically could have walked to the North Pole without setting foot on private property.
Yeah, the Crown land is in Canada, the land that is still owned by the government.
So it's protected lands. Yeah. They can use it for cutting down wood and
resources.
Exactly. Okay. And for resources.
That's almost all of it, because
exactly there are some protected areas, right?
Of Canadian population lives within 100 kilometers of the border with U.S.
Exactly.
So it's super. It's very, very tight.
It's very tight, and it's also along the rivers and lakes. Yeah. So you got a lot of population along like Toronto is along the Great Lakes, and you have along the Fleuve Saint-Laurent, you got Quebec City, Montreal, the two largest
Three Rivers
cities. Yeah, exactly. Three Rivers, and then you have Ottawa also along the Ottawa River. So we were up the Ottawa River. Fort Coulonge is like an hour and a half to 2 hours north up the Ottawa River on the Quebec side, and then we were located about 30 minutes north from that on a dirt road, and basically that there was at the time, and now there's more people living there, but at the time there were only cottages on that road. So over the years, my parents sort of forced, they were, very good, with their stuff. They forced the municipality to open up the road during the winter, because when my dad lived there alone, before my mom moved there with him and they had kids, it wasn't opened up during the winter. So my dad was, he lived there from the age of 18.
Holy shit.
That was actually my grandfather's hunting cabin on that property. And my dad moved there at the age of 18, and then he stayed there for forever. Still to this day, he's still there. And
Without electricity, running water.
exactly. Like now they have solar
anything.
panels, and they have sort of like, there is a water system that works, for most of the year until it freezes very, very, like, until it's like deep winter. So when I was young, we would basically carry water with buckets of water every day. That was one of our chore, because we were, in the mountains, right? So you had some sources of fresh water that came down the mountain that were very potable water. We just filtered with a Brita, and it was very good water. We had huge gardens.
That's the best, yeah.
Yeah, we had huge gardens.
The water from the
It's
creek
actually
in Canada is the best.
It's the best.
Fucking
Yeah.
as well, yeah.
Yeah, it's very good. You can taste the minerals. It's so fresh, and yeah, you can't have better than that. So I grew up on fresh water.
Same.
Grew up very healthy. Fresh water in the woods, eating wild meat. We had some animals as well. So we had some sheeps, goats.
You guys
over the years.
Hunting, I'm assuming.
Hunting, yeah,
okay.
yeah, exactly. A lot of deer. A little bit of moose, a little bit of bear. Small game as well, right? So when I was a kid, I would go out.
The mic, like right there.
Okay.
On a little, yeah. Right.
Yeah. So
Nice.
when I would go out, I would essentially, about 12 years old, I got my hunting, license in Quebec. How to work with a gun and
So
stuff.
you had your first gun at 12, right? That's
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was registered to my parents because I never got my license to own a gun. I just got, I could use it. So yeah, and I started hunting, and it was sort of like very different. Like, I went to preschool at the age of 5, like every other kid.
yeah.
And then I went to school in the village. So we had this like private transportation that would come and pick us up. It was like a car just for the three of us.
So how many students were in, you said preschool, so this is a small village essentially.
Yeah, so it's a small village. So there are kids that were coming from a little bit around it. We were, I think, in elementary school, we were the furthest out that would come. But then the high school for the whole region was in Fort Coulonge. So there were guys like Dan that I met, at the high school that would come out like 45 minutes away, but more towards Ottawa. So we were like, more in the woods, but there were other little villages around the area, and everyone. And so the high school we had about like 500 students at the time in the high
It's
school.
about the same size as me.
Yeah, exactly.
600 as well.
Yeah, and then elementary school is smaller. I don't know how many people, but we had maybe a class of 30 students per, or 40 students per age, right? So it was very small elementary school. But it was very interesting because I lived sort of a double life for my entire
Well,
childhood.
yeah, I didn't know that until 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, he called me. He's like, I've got the craziest story.
Yeah. Well, what happened is this, okay? Okay.
It's
so,
like I was so mad. I was like, "What the fuck?
Yeah.
Where was that all the time we were friends?"
So what happened is this, okay? So I was taught, my parents basically it's a very private type of lifestyle, right?
Of course.
You're sort of secluded from everyone. You're also very different from everyone. So, you allow some people into your life, but there's a lot of people that don't vibe with sort of being self-sufficient. My parents, some people they thought we were poor. I remember, a lot of sort of organizations would go to my parents and give them food. But, we had so much food.
You were living off the land.
We had so much food. We had years worth of food, right?
Years.
Well, it was just that's the way of living.
Yeah.
You produce, you can serve, and there's always like once you're set up, there's always animals providing, right? So I grew up on fresh goat milk. Every morning we would basically milk the goats. I didn't do it a lot. My dad would do that. Pick the fresh eggs from the chicken. Once a year you gotta butcher the chicken. And same thing for different animals, and there's always meat, lots of vegetables. It was a very, very healthy lifestyle and large quantities of it. So I grew up very, very healthy with lots of, very nice environment. My parents did a very, very good job. I didn't think so at the time. And that's essentially what happened is
You're a kid.
I was a kid, so I rebelled, you know, a little bit rebelled against my parents. I left and I didn't talk to them for a while after I left because I didn't think at the time that it was fair for me because I grew up, you know, I was going to school, talking to my friends. I couldn't relate to what they would talk about. Mm-hmm. So I was a very quiet person from the very young age because I stopped talking because they couldn't understand me. I couldn't understand them. So it was sort of this weird thing that after the age of 6 or 7 years old, I didn't talk about anything to anyone. It was like nobody knew. We had that conversation at the restaurant the other night, and Dan is the one that knows me the most, and he's like, "I never heard so much."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I was so surprised. Then even Dan was like, "Holy shit, that's
yeah." So what happened is like at the age of 16, I left. I did my own thing, and then I'm basically I discovered that over the years, but I was trying to create the opposite. I think everyone does that a little bit. You're very similar. You come from the woods. You come from, and you're trying to like blow up in the world and create a big impact. And I think it's a very common thing. People trying to do the opposite of what they grow from, right? So. I didn't really talk about it to anyone over the years, and then about a month ago, and it's crazy how fresh this is, okay? Because it's been 16 years. I left my parents at 16 years old. I'm now 32 years old. Never talked about any of my background to anyone, and my wife she was watching Netflix, and she started watching this new show. Not a new show. It's a show that's been going on for 10 years, but I never listened to it because I was never interested into it. And it's called Alone. So she was watching it on Netflix, and then these people, they go in the wild, and they're given like 10 items, and then they have to survive.
They're like dropped off in the deep into the forest.
Yeah,
so it's like good luck.
Exactly.
As long as you can survive.
And we checked.
Exactly.
We looked at one with the first episode the other day, and you're right. There's some very dumb people in there.
Well, I wouldn't say they're dumb people, but there's a difference between learning, watching something on YouTube, trying it a couple of times, and then being in a sort of survival situation, having to do it.
Right.
It's like starting a fire, right? In my childhood, I don't know, 4,000, 5,000 fires. I don't know. I started multiple fires every day because we had 2 wood stoves. We were outside all the time. There were lots of fires going all the time. Mm-hmm. I learned how to start fires with different in different ways and whatnot. It was just sort of
to you at this point.
And I was watching that show, and then I was so frustrated. I was like, babe, these people, like this guy, and I would predict things, right? So we watched the entire season over the course of a week, and every show would like predict, okay, this guy's going to be out next. That's not going to work. I was like kind of like frustrated the entire season. And then I was like, I got to write an application. And I sent in an application. And in the process of doing that, for the first time in 16 years, I sort of like reconnected with that part of myself.
Of your life. Wow.
It's been sort of this crazy thing.
That's wild, I know.
Yeah, it's very crazy because I did not go there.